Hey guys, welcome to Timeline of Humans number 2. Let's just go ahead and get started. We talked about in the first Timeline of Humans how humans went from all the way from living pretty much just like animals, naked, eating raw meats, using really basic tools like this. And when we got towards the end, we started to see that humans were using more advanced tools, like arrowheads, okay? We didn't talk too much about them the last time I did this, but the last thing we talked about was using the spear. Now, if we take obsidian, which is really sharp, okay? If you cut it, it's really sharp, and you attach it to a spear, well, let's take a look at the timeline. You can make things that give humans a lot more strength than what they can hunt. And some of the early humans in this really cold time here, you see we have the blue here, just like the last timeline. You can see that humans are able to hunt giant mastodon or woolly mammoths. And that's a pretty big feat for humans that were fairly small. And we didn't have claws and thick skin, but we had really good tools. Humans were getting smarter and better at using things from their environment to help them meet their fundamental human needs. Now, a couple of things we're going to look at on this timeline. It's a little bit different, okay? If we look down here, you can see that the time between numbers is a lot less. In the first timeline, we had like 100,000 years. This time we go from 23,000 to 20,000, so not too long. We still have ice ages, but what you're going to see are some interesting words, okay? And I want you to watch these words because these things will make great research topics to follow up on. Now, as we look at these lines down here, these are going to represent the population, okay, the number of people. And as you can see, as you see throughout, it's going to go up right now. And one of the reasons it goes up in the beginning, well, it starts to get kind of warm. Now, some of the things we're going to talk about, this right here is pretty interesting. This has to do with digging pits and then scaring animals into them. They're called pit traps. But early humans figured out some really clever ways to hunt for the food that they needed. They also, when they hunted these animals, they used those skins to make their clothing and such. Now, as we move on, this is something really important right down here. Humans start to make really advanced tools. And I think we talked about this a little bit before, but if you take obsidian and you hit it in just the right way, and humans actually started to use more pieces of wood to get it just right, they could knock off little chips. They could knock off little chips that would make just the right size stone tools that were very sharp. And humans were really good at meeting their fundamental human needs. As you can see, the population would go up. Something else we can look at is humans starting to really use caves a little bit more. You see how they have a fire outside and they've got some animals they're bringing back, some meat and such. So humans were getting pretty good with their habitat. We even see some artwork up on the cave walls. Now, this is pretty interesting because when you start to see art, you realize that humans have more time on their hands. They don't have to spend their entire day trying to survive. They can sit down and they can think and they can be creative. And that's one of the ways that humans really started to get more advanced in their technologies. Now, oops, that was loud, sorry. As we move on, we see the Magdalenian. Now, this is a way of life, a group of people and how they lived. And that would be an excellent thing to look up. But what I want to point out is the type of spear that these early humans have, okay? Do you see how they're barbed? How if you stuck a fish, you could then pull them out of the water and they would kind of stick on them. It's like a fish hook when you go fishing, right? It's not just a smooth hook. It's got a little barb on there so that it can pull the fish out. We see a couple different words down here: steppe, tundra, pine forest. Okay, these are different environments or different biomes that humans would live in. Now, as we keep going, oh, this one's really important. This one's important for a couple of reasons, okay? The first reason is if we look at the human's clothing, do you see how it's more advanced? You see how there's like almost like buttonholes that are sewn together? It looks like something we would wear, right? It's not just a piece of fur draped over. It's actual clothing fit to our bodies. Something else that's really interesting is we see a necklace, okay? And we see hair ties that are colored. And what this represents is the spiritual part on the fundamental human needs chart, okay? These were things that we spent time on to make ourselves look more, well, more beautiful, or because they made us feel good. And so these early adornments or pieces of jewelry represent that part of the fundamental human needs chart, the spiritual area. We also got a lot better at working with the leathers and different type of materials. Let's see here. There's so many things to talk about. I'm not going to talk about them all because a lot of this is going to be your follow-up work. One of the ones I always like to talk about, though, are these woven baskets, okay? And what this allowed humans to do was we had containers to store things in. We might take that for granted nowadays because we have so many containers all around us. But you could put food in there and you could carry it better. You could store things. If you made really good ones, you can maybe even bury them so to store them for later. So this gave humans the ability to live a little bit farther away from their food source. Now, as you can see, the population goes up, it goes down. We have, look at this, there's a dog next to a person with a spear. We started to see some of the first domestication where animals would start to live with us, and we started to live with animals, and over time they changed. Here's another example of domestication, but we also see something really important here. We start to see farming, okay? We start to see the first farms, and this really changes everything. All the time before this, humans, for the most part, moved around. We moved around, we lived in an area, we would gather food, we would hunt, but we stayed pretty much relatively the same for a long time before that. But when we started farming and keeping animals, called husbandry, it changed how humans lived. We started to live in cities. And what you start to see is humans gathering stones and making monuments and having cities like this, okay? Do you see how the humans built this village and they put a palisade wall, a wall made out of wood around it to protect themselves? We start to see examples of the defense parts of the fundamental human needs. Now, there's so much to talk about here. Look, we start to get metals like copper, and humans are weaving and making threads and fabrics. So many things are happening at this time. And as you can see, there's a lot more people as well. Look, we even get to the pyramids. You guys have heard of the pyramids of Giza. I'm sure you've seen them, okay? We're starting to get to big, large civilizations, okay? We get the loom, the Trojan Wars with the Greeks and the Peloponnesians, and the population just goes up and up and up, okay? It's the year 0, and we even get into the future, okay? Now, what's really interesting about this chart and about this lesson is we get to see humans go from what we would consider like really prehistoric, primitive humans all the way up to modern civilization. There is so much you can do with this timeline. I'd recommend you go back, look at the scrolling timelines that are posted so you can kind of pause it and take a look. But there's a lot of follow-up work. I'm going to recommend you talk to your teacher about what sort of follow-up work they'd like you to do. If you're in my class, there's so many different topics. We'll cover those in our other lessons, but just to name a few, we've got early human cities, domestication of animals, early farming, fishing, like how fishing changed over time. Boy, what else do we have? Early human clothing or jewelry, artwork. There's so much to do. Okay, guys, thanks a lot.